what? Just right? All right, well, if it gets too hot, we can get Judy to turn it down. Okay, tonight's session is session 2 of personal communication skills. And sorry about the typo. It should be session 2. And tonight we're talking about clear expression. Hey, introduction. In our quest for better personal communication skills, we have already looked at real listening. So put in real there in your blank. A most important but least practiced part of communication. In today's lesson, we'll look at how to really get across what you're trying to say so the other person understands you properly. To do this, let us first look at the communication process in a little more detail. So first we're going to have a look at Jesus as usual. B. Jesus did not use clear expression. We can't use Jesus as an example of clear expression, as he often deliberately said things to confuse the wise. Why would he do that? See if you have ears to hear. He who has ears, let him hear. The disciples came to him and asked, "Why do you speak to the people in parables?" He replied, "The knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken away from him. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this, people's hearts have become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For I tell you the truth, many prophets and righteous men longed to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it." That's from Matthew chapter 3. Mark 4 says, "With many similar parables Jesus spoke the word to them as much as they could understand. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. But when he was alone with his own disciples, he explained everything." So what's the deal? Why did Jesus speak confusion? Seems a strange thing to do. Okay, he's speaking in spiritual language, yep. You know, there's a saying that if I want to know where God is, I just find out where the world is going and go the opposite direction. See? Man's wisdom is like dung to God. That's the polite word. So Jesus is doing two things here. One is, I believe that the language of the spiritual world is pictures, and he was getting pictures straight from Dad and passing those on to the people. And the second thing I think was going on is he was speaking in these terms because he was trying to force people to think in spirituality, in spiritual terms, not in the natural, not in man's wisdom. And when he spoke in these picture forms, these parables, they were forced to think in spiritual terms. Who didn't he want? In other verses it talks about who he didn't want to understand so that they might repent and have life everlasting. The Pharisees. He didn't want them to understand it.
Jesus died for everybody?
Yeah, he did. But God opposes the proud. And I think we talked a little bit about this last time, that unbelief and pride are the two things I really have to watch out for. And there's another parable that goes, no sense casting pearls before swine, because why? What's the rest of that verse? Because they'll trample them underfoot, they'll disrespect them, and they'll rip you to pieces. So I can only lead a horse to water, but I can't make him drink. And so the Pharisees were in that situation. Now, other times, of course, Jesus did speak clearly. But as I was trying to come up with an example of Jesus speaking really clearly in his expression, what struck me the most is that he didn't. Most of the time he didn't. He didn't want them to understand easily. He wanted them to put some effort in. Was Jesus a rescuer? Jesus was not a rescuer. He made people do work. He made them take responsibility. He made them think about things. He didn't make anything easy for them unless he took compassion on them because he saw in what dire straits they were in. Okay, let's go to page 2. C, communication. Communication problems while speaking. While speaking. So last time we were talking about listening. Tonight we're going to talk about speaking. Let's look in more detail what sort of communication problems speakers have. You know, I've got a problem because I'm from another country, and some of you like making fun of me. But actually, the main culprit's not here tonight, so we can get on with it. Okay, number 1. Words have different meaning for different people. An example of this is the word couple. Where I'm from in Michigan, the word couple means a few. In Oregon, where my wife is from, the word couple means a pair or two. This used to get me into big trouble with Susan when I would say, it's only a couple of blocks away when we're walking down in the city. You know, she would feel that I betrayed her trust when the place we were looking for turned out to be 3 or 4 city blocks away and her feet hurt. You know? So she basically said to me, I'm not going with you anywhere. We're driving, you know, because you're not to be trusted. Now, I didn't intend to deceive her. It was just a misunderstanding due to our different backgrounds. Now, just while we're on that, I might say this, that in marriage counseling, I see, besides the spiritual issues, that there's 3 big areas. Okay, the 3 big areas are family of origin, that is my background, where I've come from. The second big issue is male-female differences. And the third issue is communication problems. So to me, those are the big 3 besides spirituality. And number 2, male-female differences. Huge. You know, just like this misunderstanding between my wife and I because different parts of the country, huge misunderstandings because of male thinking and female thinking. You know? It's a miracle any of us stay married, really. When you think such alien creatures, how to put 2 alien creatures together, and the fact that it works at all is amazing. So, different meanings. And by the way, anyone that is in relationship with someone of the opposite sex, I suggest you read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. You know, I think it's a mandatory reading because of this example of communication issues. Number 2, people hide the real meaning of their words. People hide the real meaning of their words. Sometimes we accidentally hide the real meaning of what we are saying by not expressing ourselves well. Other times we hide the real meaning deliberately. Often we're ambivalent about expressing ourselves accurately. We both want to tell someone something, but maybe are afraid to as well. Now, ambivalent means having it both ways, or loving and hating something at the same time, having mixed emotions, okay? Because we all have insecurities, all of us are concerned about how another person will react to what we say at times. Some people are particularly good at giving hidden messages, but then get upset when their partner doesn't know how to decode the message. The partner then gets blamed for being insensitive, when actually they're just ignorant of the real signals. And I don't know if the ladies would appreciate this comment, but I'll say it anyhow. In women's culture, it's often considered okay to... just got to get some notes out here for Patricia. It's often okay to do things very subtly, hidden messages. And a lot of guys are too thick to get the hidden messages. And you have to be plain with us, literal creatures. Okay, let's go on. Unfortunately, decoding is always guesswork. We can never be completely sure we've analyzed the message correctly unless we use reflective listening techniques to double-check what we think we have understood, what we think we've understood. See? So as we talked about last time, the message that gets sent and the message that gets received can be two totally different things. Because what I intended to say and what you might have actually heard might be different. Number 3, we all beat around the bush. We all beat around the bush to some extent. Tied in with the above problem is that we have trouble getting to the point. Often the subject we don't want to broach directly is the one we really need to talk about. There's two things about counseling that's interesting. One is that some people will always leave it until they're about ready to go out the door, and they'll say, oh, by the way, we haven't talked about the thing that's really bugging me. That's true. That's one thing. And the other thing is, somebody might say to me, listen, we talk about things, and then they say, there's something I don't really want to tell you. Now, that's when my ears perk up, because the very thing they don't want to tell me is the thing they probably should be. I mean, they've come to a counselor to get through these issues, and that's probably the real issue, is the one they don't want to talk about. Back to your notes. Frequently we skirt around the real issue, testing the waters to see if we will get a negative reaction. This comes about because important issues also make us the most vulnerable to the other person, and so we want to know whether we can trust them. Number 4, people fail to get in touch and express feelings. Express feelings. Many people have trouble identifying their feelings and even more trouble expressing them to others. Part of this hesitation is our cultural heritage and whether we're males or females. Men in particular in Western society are not encouraged to show most feelings. Frequently people are taught as children to hide or suppress their feelings. Others are taught to let it all hang out and overwhelm people with their feelings. Either way, few people are taught to identify feelings and then verbalize them to others. Very important skill. For our mental health, it's an important skill. For relationship, it's an important skill to be honest and truthful. To be children of light, to be Christians, we need to talk accurately and directly. D, kinds of expressions. Kinds of expressions. Our communication with other people can be broken down, it should be down instead of done, into various kinds of expression. Some are listed below. 1. Observations. Observations. This is reporting what your senses tell you. It means to notice physical information without speculation or inferences of your own. It is taking note of simple facts without coming to conclusions. Now, if you ever see a psychiatrist's form, and Dr. O came and shared on various occasions with us some different ways of looking at psychiatric problems. Dr. O is a Christian psychiatrist. One of the things they do, of course, is they look at observable things, whether the person's tired, how they're dressed, their application or lack thereof of makeup perhaps, just an observation, how they walk. Some psychiatric conditions are easily spotted because of the way people walk, and so forth. So on this form, he just writes down, and other people that are counselors might do this as well, just observation. Seems distressed because, facial expression or whatever. Okay, number 2. The second kind of expression is our thoughts. Thoughts. These are your own conclusions, inferences drawn from what you have heard, read, or observed. It includes attempts to reword your experiences so as to understand why and how events occur. Value judgments may be included as you decide what is good or bad, wrong or right. Beliefs, opinions, and theories are all examples of thoughts. Number 3, feelings. So that's our third kind of expression, feelings. This is difficult for some people as they are threatened or frightened by emotion. What you feel is a large part of what makes you unique and special. When you share your feelings, this builds more intimacy and understanding with others. Feeling statements are not observations, value judgments, or even opinions. The information you give is merely what is going on inside you at the time. And by the way, relationship, the bonding between two people in relationship is all about feelings. The more intellectual approach I have towards a relationship, the less bonding I'll have. And quite interesting, and some of you heard this before, I think, but you might remember they had that hostage taking at the Japanese embassy in Peru. And 6 months later they finally invaded the place after digging tunnels underneath. Why didn't they try to rescue the hostages straight away? That's right. The longer the hostages and the hostage takers spend together, the less likely they are to kill. Strange, isn't it? Because those strong emotions actually bind those people together. So it's not love that binds me to my spouse. It could be hate that binds me to my spouse as well. Any shared feelings. It's on the feeling level that two human beings get bound together. Okay? I remember another little example of this was I had an acquaintance in high school who invited me to a party at his place. I don't know why I ever got invited to start with, because he didn't like me all that well, or I him. And the party was an absolute disaster. I won't go into all the details, but in the end, he got hurt, I got hurt, big disaster. Went to uni, saw this guy there, thought, man, I'm never even going to say hello to this man. And 2 years later, we were best of friends. Strange how that happens. Because any shared feelings. We had this terrible party where everything went wrong. There was accusations flying everywhere. And as we shared those feelings about how we felt, say, some spark got ignited and the thing just carried on from there. And we became best friends. Number 4, needs. Now, of course, this is not very rational, is it? I mean, sharing negative feelings with somebody, intellectually you think that's the last thing in the world that's ever going to cause people to come together. But that's the strangest thing, you know. Human beings are irrational creatures, and we have that spiritual side which is irrational from the mathematical kind of logic, and we have the feeling side of us which is also irrational. Number 4, needs. You are the only person who really knows what it is you need. You cannot assume that those who love you are in touch with your real needs. A common statement is, if you love me, you know what is wrong. This remark is faulty on 2 grounds. First, it's impossible to know what is going on inside another human being. Secondly, it's a big mistake to encourage others to mind read you. It will only lead to misunderstandings. So two problems there, and if you're one of those people, be careful with that. You know, love is not someone trying to mind read you. That's not love. Let's go on. If you have to ask, then you don't understand me is another communication error. Needs are not judgment statements or observations. Needs are simple statements about what would help or please you as a person. So that's another faulty statement. If you have to ask, then you don't understand. Now, communication is all about asking so that you do understand. Number 5, self-disclosure. Self-disclosure. We can sum up all the various aspects of self-expression and call it self-disclosure. Whenever we talk, we share of ourselves, unless we keep it clinical and observational. Wives often complain that the husbands are just giving them the facts without sharing of themselves. Husbands have to disclose their thoughts and feelings for wives to feel they've shared with them. Let's look at the progression of disclosure from the relatively easy observations to our intentions towards another. So in this little chart that you've got there, little pie chart, there are 6 segments there, and I just want you to make a start somewhere on the segment. Wherever you want to start it, and just number them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just number the segments. And these are in order now. So the easiest easiest thing to understand is observation. So that's just a clinical exercise. That's number 1. Sensations are harder yet. Feelings are harder yet. Thoughts are harder yet. Needs are even more difficult to discern. And intentions are almost impossible. So you might want to just put some arrows there to show the progression from 1 through to 6. Some of the most mixed up people I'm counseling with at the moment are people who find a great need to work out people's motivations. And they're going nuts trying to work it out. Because they can't. You know, you can observe people and write down fairly clinical statements because those behaviors are on the outside, but when you get all the way down to intentions, impossible to work out what people's intentions are. You know, you'd have to do a lot of talking with that person to really work out all their intentions. You know why? Because some of the intentions they have are in the heart, and the heart's deceitfully wicked, who could know it? They don't even know. They don't even know what their intentions are. So how are they supposed to tell you that? You see? See how it gets more and more hidden? Observations are on the outside. The further along we go down that list, the more inwardly it becomes. Observations on the outside, sensations a bit more, feelings a bit more, thoughts a bit deeper, needs are very deep, intentions are right down in the center, in the heart. Nothing more frustrating than trying to work out people's intentions. You're going to go mad trying to do it. Fiona?
Isn't it easier to share thoughts than feelings, or is it deliberately first feelings then thoughts?
Well, this particular model here puts feelings before thoughts.
Can you give us an example of intentions?
Just before I go on, probably the reason why they're putting feelings here is because if I have a feeling, I'm probably going to show it emotionally on the outside. Where thoughts, I'm not going to show you my thoughts on the outside. You know, I mean, you're not going to be able to see anything. You know, at least if I'm angry or I'm happy or I'm sad, I'm going to have a facial expression. Where thoughts are further inward, so the only way you're ever going to find out thoughts is if we communicate. At least feelings, I can observe your body language. Now you're talking about intentions. Motivations would be another word. Why I enjoy helping people. Why you enjoy helping people. Why does someone enjoy helping people? I mean, there's 1,000 different motivations. Ultimately, probably the only one that's really valid is that God wants me to. Because anything else is really out of me. You know, if I'm helping you to feel good about myself, that's not love. That's out of necessity, trying to build my self-esteem up. So that would be a motivation or an intent. You know, somebody gives you a card, completely out of the blue, and just says, "Fiona, you're just such a wonderful person." And you go on, hang on a minute, what's this all about? Where did this come from? Why are they doing that? You're trying to work out motivations and dangerous stuff. Nothing more frustrating than to try to control the uncontrollable. And, trying to control somebody's motivations is impossible. I've got no control over that. Okay, E, blocks to clear expression. Blocks to clear expression. There are lots of blocks to clear expression, and so we just looked at some kinds of expressions, and now we're going to look at some blockages. Our tone of voice, our grammar, our incomplete messages can all stop the listener from really understanding us. Some blocks we have looked at already, others are below. Let's start with one of the most damaging blocks to relationship, and it's called hidden agendas. Number 1, hidden agendas. In relationships, when we have a hidden agenda, we have a list of things that we would like to say but can't say directly. They are messages about what we really feel inside. If we are careful in our listening skills, we can pick up such messages. All of us use hidden agendas. A, as barriers against others getting too close. B, when we don't feel good about ourselves. C, to make ourselves appear better at something than we really feel we are. D, to give another hidden message when we're afraid of the other person's reactions. E, to avoid dealing with the real issues with the other. And F, to impress. The second thing we can do is give partial messages. So instead of hidden agendas, we have partial messages. These are incomplete messages. They are statements sent without all the facts. Some inferences, feelings, or needs of the person have been left out. Okay, some important information has been left out. Such messages create confusion and distrust as people know something is missing. A quick example of that would be recently a couple had a big blue. They were at the movie theater, and the husband didn't want the terrible coffee in this place, so he said, I'm getting out. And so he left the theater portion where they were at, and the wife thought that because he said, I'm getting out, that something wrong with the movie, or something wrong with her, or maybe he was still angry with her, and it just turned out that he didn't want the coffee. That's all it was about. But he never told her that. So huge row over this huge communication gulf. So cause the confusion and distrust. B, cause suspicion when people hear incomplete information as they say it. So why is this person keeping certain things from me? C, keep the listener from responding so we don't hear both sides. D, make others uncomfortable with demands for change when we don't express clear information as to what we expect. E, the listener gets frustrated due to the uncertainty surrounding our communication. So those are all partial messages. The third type is contaminated messages. Contaminated messages. These are mixed statements which contain other messages besides the surface one. They may contain thoughts that a person would really like to say but feel they cannot for some reason. Such messages not only leave out important information, but also transmit disguised, hidden messages under the surface. Contaminated messages are confusing in their double meaning, cause alienation as the other person is unsure of the speaker's motivation, rely on the other person's ability to interpret what is said, thus resulting in misunderstandings, send undercurrents of emotions, causing emotional reactions in the other, and give contrary signals. The content of the spoken word, the tone of voice, and gestures may be saying different or opposite things. Body messages are often different from spoken messages. Somebody asks you to, as a single person, to go out with you, and you say yes while you're shaking your head. Although in other cultures that means yes, but in our culture that means no. Or a pretty classic male-female difference here that's a contaminated message. Let's say there's a young couple that's been... tape hasn't clicked yet, has it? Okay, the young couple... Excuse a sec. Okay. Young couple, the woman does not think that it's going anywhere, like maybe the guy's, there's some sort of problem, she's not sure they can work it out. And so the woman says to the guy, listen, look, I really think we need to stop here in our relationship and, let's break it up. Now, the man goes away, and let's just, for argument's sake, say he really loves her. What is male thinking here? Male thinking is that somebody that you're hurting, you withdraw. Now, what's the woman thinking? Well, she's most likely thinking, female psychology would have it, that she's saying, if this guy really loved me, he'd fight for me. He'd be in the boots and all, fighting for me instead of withdrawing. See? So, when she said, the mixed message was here, the contaminated message was that when she said, let's break up, it could be that she loves him. But the pain of living with the guy is so much that she wants a separation. See? So how is the guy supposed to read this? Is he supposed to move away, or is he supposed to stay and fight, you say? And then if he stays and fight, she might say, quit bugging me. See? Yeah, when does no mean no and yes mean yes? See? And this would be a classic example where that's really difficult to discern because the different ways that men and women respond. Now, we all do those sort of contaminated messages, though. It's not just limited to females. Okay, F, some common hidden agendas. Let's look at some hidden agendas. And be really sort of pay attention to this section here, because you're going to get to do an exercise in a few minutes where I'm going to get you to write down your hidden agendas. Okay? So some common hidden agendas. Hidden agendas are so important. Let's look at some of the major common ones. 1, I'm good. I'm good. It's a self-statement that you're thinking inside your head, I'm good. An interesting thing happened recently, talking to a young pre-marriage couple, and I said to this person something like, talking about male-female differences, the ladies seem to be pretty typical female, and the guys seem to be pretty typical male. So I said, well, you're to the male. I said, you're pretty normal. He says, no, I'm not. No, I'm superior. No, he meant that in all sincerity. He said, no, I'm superior. And I went, oh, okay. And I thought, doesn't she have a problem on her hands? The guy was totally serious. Now, he didn't have a hidden agenda. It was right out in the open. I'm good. That's what he's saying. I'm good. People who use this agenda want other people to know about their strengths, attributes, values, wealth, status, generosity. Now, this guy didn't have a hidden agenda. It was right up front. So that's first one. We may say things that give the implication that I'm somehow better than the other person, or that I'm, we'll look at some other ones in a minute that are similar to this, or just plain that I just want you to know what a nice guy I am. Judy?
Does that sometimes stem from a low self-esteem?
I would think so, absolutely, yeah. To me, pride and rejection are two sides of the same coin. That is, someone who's presenting as arrogant and prideful often will be jelly inside. There's some area of damage inside them where they feel really vulnerable, so they have to put this protective armor out the front. And vice versa. Someone who appears as having low self-esteem on the outside and is quiet and gentle can have a huge pride problem in there. So, ultimately, if you think of it in spiritual terms, rejection's actually sin. Truly, low self-esteem from God's point of view is sin. Now we tend to look on low self-esteem as a problem, but that's a difficulty with allowing psychology to contaminate biblical understandings, because everything turns into problems. In fact, one of the issues with the new translations, there's a particular very modern translation of the Bible, and it never uses the word sin anywhere. It just substitutes the word problem. See? So, people that are reading that aren't going to think in terms of repentance then. I've got a problem, well, that's okay. People have problems. You don't have to repent if you've got a problem. Okay, first agenda, I'm good. Second one, I'm good, but you're not. I'm good, but you're not. This agenda tries to prove how great the speaker is by showing how bad everyone else is. Now, you've come across people like that, I'm sure. They're putting on airs about how good they are and look down their nose at you. I remember I was new to the country teaching at Maribyrnong in the western suburbs, and it was actually an excellent school, very, very good school at that time. Very multicultural, very dynamic. We hardly had any Australians at all. It was everybody but. And there was one lady teacher from eastern suburbs, and she hated it there. She hated it. And her attitude was, teaching in the western suburbs. Oh, yeah, She should be at, Glen Waverley or someplace like that. I think that's where she was actually living. She just hated every minute of it. So her hidden agenda, whenever she talked about the kids there, was always put down. Whenever she talked about the school, it was always put down. And she couldn't see anything good in the place at all. And it was actually a marvelous place. Okay, let's go on to page 6. Number 3, you're good, but I'm not so good. So this is the woe is me story, In this agenda, the sender flatters the other person while putting themselves down. I wish I could be like you. I'm just such a worm. And you're just so good. You're just such an eagle, and I'm just such a worm.
That could be fairly close to humility, though, couldn't it?
Not in the way that this person's saying it. I wouldn't call that humility. No one who calls himself a worm has humility. Okay. Now, if you're saying, Tony, that we are to the Bible talks about thinking better of others and recognizing their strengths and truly saying, well, okay, I have a limitation in that area, but I've got other strengths in other areas that are really important. You might call that humility, but not if I'm sort of using that tone of voice. And I'm sure you've come across people that have whined to you and said how bad they are and how good you are, and they wish they could be like you, and there's just a fair amount of self-pity in the whole thing. Okay, number 4, I'm helpless, I suffer. Real victim mentality here, Nothing's ever going right, everything's wrong, the world's going to end, or they're going to take their life. I'm helpless, I suffer. This agenda focuses on the sender as the victim of circumstances. Number 5, I'm blameless. I'm blameless. More victim mentality here. That is blame shifting. This agenda tries to take the blame off the speaker. If only you'd have done this. Somebody recently was sharing to me this person's spouse called up the wrong insurance company. And they said, when the spouse said, well, we've been with this other one all this time, the speaker said, well, you didn't tell me that. Now, this spouse knew all along that they had a different insurance company. He just lost the plot. And blame shifted onto the wife. Okay, number 6, I'm fragile. I'm fragile. This person has been hurt and is pleading not to be hurt further. So basically saying, don't tell me truth, or don't use aggressive language at me because I've been hurt and I can't take it. Number 7, I'm tough. This person is hiding their hurts behind a mask of taking it all. I'm tough. Number 8, I know it all. I know it all. This person hides their insecurity behind gaining others' approval by knowing all the answers. Make a good trivia show host. Okay, well, in exercise G, what I'll do is I'm going to give you 10 minutes to start in on your hidden agendas. Think about it. We all use these, people, all of us, myself included. Now, I want you to think which of these you use with which people. Remember, like last week, we looked at some of your blockages to good listening, and like daydreaming or shifting the focus of the conversation, or ignoring people, or whatever it might be. And you were to write down some of the ways that you had listening blocks, and you had different listening blocks with different people. And one person made the remark, is it okay to have, how many was it? 6 different blocks with the one person. Okay, well, you're going to have hidden agendas. Okay, for one day, keep track of all the agendas you use. List the most common ones and try to determine who you use which agendas with. Find out which agenda you tend to use the most. Ask Jesus why you feel the need to use that particular agenda. Start this exercise by determining what agendas you use today and write them in the space below. Okay? And I'm going to give that to you for homework as well. So make a start on it now. When you're finished or you can't think of any more, come out for a cuppa and see if you can get some more of those for homework. Okay? But you're going to find that you use these things. All of us do. Okay, how'd you get on with hidden agendas?
Yes.
Did you find a few? Yes? Disconcerting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
One of them I gave you.
Yeah?
I use all the kind of friends.
Yes?
I use all the...
Yeah. Yeah, one is a universal job and the other one's specific. Yeah. Yeah.
3 on one person.
3 on one person. That's it. That's
And
it.
friends
Yeah.
now know we laugh.
Yeah.
We laugh and I say, here we go again.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Anyone struggle not to get one? Did anyone not get one? Okay. Well, you might have to do some praying. Yeah. Just got a cute little story to read to you. I'll let you finish that agenda sheet if you didn't get a chance to, but it's important that we understand ourselves well enough that we can eliminate those hidden agendas from the things that we say. And one of the big issues is forgiveness. That is, that true forgiveness is when I not just forgive the person, but release them to be the person that they are, without judgment, unconditional love. And when I release other people to be the way that they are, without judging them, then I don't have to puff myself up. I don't have to, put them down, and those hidden agendas can be dealt with. Diane.
Where does boundaries come into that? Does that not come into life? It has to, doesn't it?
Oh, boundaries, sure. I mean,
So
Jesus
how
had plenty of
do you deal with
boundaries.
what you just said with the boundary issue when you say talking about acceptance?
Well, acceptance is not trying to read their motivations as being negative, even if you know that they are. Someone stabbing you in the back, forgiveness says that you forgive them for it, and you release them to keep doing it, but you don't have to let them. See, when someone's manipulating me, there's 2 issues, isn't it? One is the person trying to manipulate me, and why do I let them? See, now I can't stop somebody trying to manipulate me, but I don't have to let them. That's where boundaries comes in.
But what if they keep persisting?
Well, we'll release them to keep persisting, but you don't have to play into it.
But sometimes you're in a helpless situation.
Okay, how are you in helpless?
Get at it.
Because
Well,
they-
for
that's the-
instance,
Yeah,
I have an old car that
Yes.
doesn't go very well,
Yes?
and I was talked into getting it. My husband talked me into getting it, so it all relies on him to fix it. And for lots of the time, there's that much rust in the floor you can see the road as you drive along.
Yep. Yep.
And you just feel very powerless in the situation because you know that I can't fix it. I can't weld and panel beat and all that jazz. So, and it's very hard because What's the
Okay, well, you're stuck there with your husband buying you a rusted-out bucket, and he isn't fixing it, so you're stuck with having a heap on the road. Very frustrating. But when I'm talking about manipulation, I'm talking about more. Yes, okay. Did you have, maybe you had some other options before he bought this thing for you?
No, he talked me into buying it. My
Right, right. He talked you to buy a wreck with your money.
Yeah.
Why did you let him?
Well, because there was all these promises that he'd fix it.
Okay, but based on his track record, were those realistic promises? Okay, but that's where the no comment, huh? You don't want to impute.
This
But
is number 4, isn't it? I'm helpless, I suffer. You're
Well,
accepting
no,
the oath.
I'm not.
okay, I hear you, Judy, and that's really what Diane's asking is about boundaries. See, you can't stop a person that gives you promises from breaking those promises. We can't prevent that.
Next time I'm going to go and buy a car myself
Yep.
without your advice. He's mortified to think that I would be so horrible.
Well, why don't you take his advice, but then go out and make up your own mind?
Okay.
By taking advice, I mean listen to the guy, because he might have some wisdom. See, part of the problem here is that God speaks us to the most unlikely sources. Even our ignorant spouses, God's going to talk to us through them. You see, and I can't despise that. I have to take what everybody says to me, and I have to take it away to Jesus and say, Jesus, what do you say here about this circumstance? And he might say, well, that other person's right. You're the one that's wrong. See. Now I understand. I mean, a lot of these things get blurred, and we're making it. It does get complex, and we're just trying to make it simple here, just so we can understand what's happening. We have to break a very complex thing into smaller bite-sized bits. But ultimately, if someone's manipulating me, they've got some sort of hook of why I tie into that. And that's my problem. Now, I can't stop them from trying to manipulate me, but do I have to allow them to manipulate? Do I have to accede to that? And that's where boundaries come in. I can't stop them from trying, but I can say, so far, no further, Buster.
So your boundary is more not having the hook that they attach to.
That's
it, rather
right.
than saying, do not do that again.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Jesus said at one stage that Satan came to him, and Jesus said, you've got nothing on me. In other words, Satan had no hook. There was no where to hook into Jesus so that people could manipulate him.
So you don't own it.
That's right. That's right. Let me just give you this little story here. I think this is good on clear expression. The author's name is Bob Cohen, and it's called They Speak with Other Tongues. Have you ever been saved? A rather wide-eyed young fellow startled me with his question, as we walked for the bus. He handed me a booklet with a picture of hell on the front. Sure, I responded. Once when I was 9 years old, I was swimming at Jones Beach on Long Island, and a strong undertow began to drag me out to sea. My uncle heard my call for help, and, No, he interrupted. Redeemed. Have you been redeemed? Reborn. Washed in the blood. What? I inquired. In the world are you talking about? Convicted. Have you ever been convicted? No, of course not, I replied. I've never been in trouble with the law. He looked at me square in the eye. I think you need to be delivered. Delivered? I was just waiting for the bus home. I think I'll stick with that, but thank you very much. He looked at me as if I was speaking another language. Can we have lunch together sometime, he asked. I work just down the street. Sure, that would be fine. He looked harmless enough, but I must admit he was an unusual fellow and quite difficult to understand. That Wednesday I had lunch with Ed. He was a little late, but explained that he was having some quiet time. Quiet time, I asked. What do you mean? Each day, just before lunch, I have a time in my prayer closet, he responded. I was puzzled. Do you pray in a closet at work? No, he answered. It's in my car. A closet in your car? He changed the subject. Like the first day I met him, again he left me confused. This Ed is quite a unique fellow, I thought. As we parted that day, Ed gave me a little booklet that explained how someone could come into a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. I read it and understood it and knew that it was exactly what I needed. That night, I submitted my life to Jesus, and I was born again, as it stated in the booklet. 2 days later, I told Ed. He was overjoyed. The following week, we got together again, and Ed strongly urged me to find a good body. I was surprised at the suggestion, but it sounded good to me. I took his advice and proceeded to comb the local health clubs for an attractive woman. When I met Denise, I knew she was the one. We began to date, and soon she became a believer too. Ed rejoiced and told us it was crucial that we get planted so that we could grow together. Sometimes it's hard to understand this guy, I confided in Denise. I told Ed I wasn't quite sure what he meant by planted. He responded, committed. You both need to be committed now that you know Jesus. Now, wait a minute, I protested. Just because I don't understand what planted means doesn't mean that I'm nuts. Anyway, I think that trusting Jesus is the most important thing that I've ever done in my life. It was obvious that Ed's patience was growing thin. He explained, Bob and Denise, you have to be plugged in. Don't you understand? No, we didn't. But I had wondered if getting plugged in had any connection with going out under the power, something I'd heard Ed mention but hoped it would never happen to me. Regretfully, I had to miss worship next Sunday, but Ed and I had breakfast together Monday morning, and he filled me in on what had happened. God moved. He said with excitement, God really moved yesterday. Where is he now? I pleaded. I was just getting to know him, and now he's gone? No, Bob. God hasn't gone anywhere. I was relieved. It's just that so many people were stepping out and moving in the gifts. You mean people were leaving during the meeting, I asked? And what's this about presents? No, it's the gifts. The gifts were really flowing, he said. That's beautiful, I answered. People were giving gifts to each other. I wish I was there. Now Ed seemed confused. Anyway, he said, changing the subject, Denise was there, and boy, was she on fire. Fire? Denise got burned? What happened? Is she okay? No, Bob, you don't understand. That sure is an understatement, I thought. Denise is just fine. It's just that I believe she is really called and that God wants to use her. Things were getting clearer. Did Denise mention she's getting too many phone calls or something? And what's this about God wanting to take advantage of her, I asked. Ed sighed. Can I walk in the light with you? Where do you want to go? I answered. Of course we can walk in the light. It's daytime, Ed. He just shook his head. I don't know what it is, but sometimes it seems that Ed and I have a hard time communicating. It's now been 2 years since I was saved and delivered. Now I'm plugged in and planted and committed to a body. God has been moving, and I've been stepping out in the gifts. I can hardly believe how God is using me. I've developed one new problem, though. It seems all my old friends just don't understand me anymore. When I share about my redemption, that I've been washed as white as snow, and that I desire to follow the Lamb, they seem to tune me right out. I guess they're just convicted when they see I'm on fire. Yeah, isn't it true? Well, any other comments on hidden agendas? Okay, well, let's move on. H, page 6. Understanding ourselves than others. Understanding ourselves than others. In order to send messages that another human can understand, we need to know more about how humans function and what's important to them. To start with, we need to know ourselves better. We have all heard the proverb, know thyself. Number 1, understanding ourselves. So fill in the blank is understanding ourselves. A large share of expressing ourselves is responding to the other person. However, as we have seen, it's often very difficult to accurately portray ourselves, let alone decode what someone else is feeling. Why is this? The following diagram will help. Oh, no, it's okay. Thanks. Okay, you've got 3 circles and a square there. If you put feel in the middle, in the circle, just put feel. And then thoughts. and then the outside circle is behavior. Now, one of the questions before was, which is more difficult to fathom, people's thoughts or feelings. Now, this model has got it the other way around. But before we were looking at observational, so my thoughts are actually less observable than my feelings. But here it's talking about feelings being on a deeper level than thoughts. Okay, the comment that goes with the diagram is, and by the way, 10 is the footnote, and at the end of the 4 sessions I'll give you a bibliography and all the footnotes. The diagram suggests that a person's behaviors are easily observable. They are on the outside. A person's thoughts, however, are not directly observable, are only clue to these other person's behaviors. The emotions are pictured in the core of the individual's being because they're often concealed very carefully. As with thoughts, our only clue to a person's feelings comes to us indirectly through his behaviors. Okay, unless somebody tells me what's going on, the only way I can actually ever know is just by looking at their behavior. And I think that's one reason why the Bible says that we're to judge people by their fruits. Because if you look at a person's behavior long enough, you'll connect in with their heart. How the Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. If you listen to me long enough, you'll know what's in my heart by what I say. Diane?
Then the person who said to the guy, well then just go away, and he went away, his behaviour in actual fact wasn't kind of matching up with, he loved her, but he still went away. So if you're judging by behaviour, it doesn't always work, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But it's the only observable thing I've got. If people aren't communicating, that's why communication is so important. Because if I don't have communication, all I can do is go on behavior. And what does that tell me? It doesn't tell anything about their motivations or their feelings or their thoughts. As you can see, identifying feelings in ourselves and others is the most difficult. Easier are thoughts, that's if they're communicating, of course, and easiest of all are actions or words. Number 2, how do I send messages? How do I send messages? Begin with examining the present way you transmit messages. A. Sort out what the real intent of your message is until each part of the message is clear and distinct. Rehearse, if necessary, the main points you wish to transmit. C. Contact the emotions behind your message. What do they tell you? D. Separate what you know and can observe from what you only think and guess is true. E. Aim for the best time and place for your discussions with others. Okay, this is a good conflict resolution skill to go through those 5 things. So if I've identified my feelings, if I have accurately worked out the clues that the other person has given me without jumping to conclusions, and if I've actually listed what my actual intention is. Now most of us don't go through all that, but that's why we get ourselves into trouble. Some of us are quick to speak and our brain's not connected in fast enough to our mouth. The goal is to arrive at a non-threatening way to express your need. Number 3, the Johari window. Many things are not obvious to us. While we are becoming more aware of ourselves and others, it is wise to remember that there are some reasons why we don't share with others all of our innermost thoughts and feelings. Some of these are, A, and I'll get back to the diagram in a minute, society doesn't encourage us to. B, keeping things hidden is a defense against the attacks by others. C, some things we are blinded to in ourselves. D, some of our innermost things are secrets to both ourselves and others, and this is the unconscious area. So D is unconscious or heart issues. And the Johari window above lets us see all of these in one spot. So in the 4 squares, top left, right open.
So you want to put 4 squares?
Yeah, they're just divided into 4 squares. Top left, just put open. So I'm an open book. I'm openly expressing who I am and what I am. Top right corner, put blind. That is, I can't see what is going on in other people because I've got the problem. And the bottom left corner is hidden. The other person is hiding things from me. Okay? And the final one is unknown. So those are 4 states of consciousness, if you want to put it that way. Open, where I'm open to the person, they're open back to me. Okay, if you wanted to do this as a matrix, one the tape, open, me open to them open to me being blinded to them when they might be open to me being open to them when they're hidden to me. See? And both of us have no idea, unknown. Both of us have no idea what's going on because it's both unknowable motivations in the heart. So that's why we don't often get it right, because all this stuff's going on, you see. Okay, back to page 8. Ahead to page 8, I should say. See, miscommunication. Back in time or ahead on the page, you know. Number 4, other awareness. Other awareness is essential. This means watching for the response of the other person. What are their facial expressions, their eye contact, their body language? What messages are they sending to you? And we'll try to look at some body messages at some stage. Like I said to you last session, I've got 5 topics to get into 4 lessons, and so most likely body messages will be part of our workshop. Okay, whole messages. Whole messages. The skill of giving complete or whole messages includes many parts. In giving a complete message, you, 1, include all the kinds of expressions listed in the previous sections, that is, what you see, think, feel, and need. So, basically, ideally, any intense conversation, any D&M you have with the other person should include what you see, what you observe. You know, Susan, you seem to be upset. Observation because of your facial expression. You seem to be upset. Then I might say, I think you're still angry with me. Okay, that might be something that I'm thinking. And then I might state my feelings. If you're still angry with me, that would really annoy me. You know? And what might need to be? My need is to have us in harmony. And so can we talk about this? Now that's a condensed version, obviously, to get those 4 in. But if you're going to have a deep and meaningful conversation with a partner, you really ought to cover those 4 different expressions of observations, what you think, what you feel, and what their needs are. Number 2, do not leave out any part of the message. And like I just did when I said, let's go back. Well, I meant go back in time to the page 8 ahead. See, but when I said go back, some of you would have thought, well, he meant flip the page back like a previous page. See, so that was bad communication. Don't leave out any part of the message. Or like the example I gave with the man that wanted to go and get an ice cream because he hated the coffee. Number 3, make sure your content is simple and straightforward. And I might say, especially when you're dealing with males. Because we're pretty simple creatures, and you just have to state it as simply as you can. Read my lips. Number 4, make the real intent of your message clear. Now, that's not always easy. You might have to go over things. Somebody might say, well, I'm not sure really what you mean there. And then you have to explain it again and get some feedback. Remember, get them to feedback. Active listening skills. Number 5, state your message in such a way that the listener can reflect back that it is understood. So as a speaker, I need to give the listener time to reflect back to me. So if I'm a motor mouth and I'm just going on and on and on, and not letting them have a time to reflectively listen, to talk back and say, well, I'm not sure I really understand that, I'm then going to assume that just because I've said it, they got it. And that's not going to be the case, is it? Big mistake. Number 6, don't cover up what you are or hide your real needs. The listener shouldn't have to guess what you're trying to say. Okay, especially as Christians, we're children of light. Let's be transparent. Let's get that all out in the light. Let's be honest and not give way to fear here about people's reactions. Number 7, allow the other person to gain accurate feedback about the situation, trusting what is said and seen. If I've made myself clear, then Susan has to be able to trust that what I've said is accurate. Because I could withhold things from her. Now that'll come out in the long run, of course, and ruin our trust if I'm withholding things. Number 8, give your partner the opportunity to work for change using straightforward requests and suggestions. And we'll look more at these straightforward requests called assertive statements. We'll look at that next session. Okay, Jay, some rules for effective expression. Number 1, work on making your messages direct. Don't assume that others know what you think or want. Avoid the desire to hint or tell a third person what the problem is. Don't give messages to third parties. Can you tell your mother that? No, you tell your wife directly. Number 2, messages should be given immediately. Delaying communication often makes the situation worse. Your immediate response decreases the possibility of misunderstanding and faulty behavior. Immediate responses increase intimacy. Okay, and there's a thing in counseling called immediacy, which is where I share my feelings about myself right then and there, how I'm feeling in the counseling situation. So if a client is feeling angry with me because I've made a statement that they disagree with, then immediacy would be if they shared right on the spot with me. And listen, Daniel, this is really making me angry what you're saying here. I have the feeling that, whatever. Or as a counselor, I might do that. That is, this thing that you've just shared with me is really awful, and I'm feeling really sad for you. And that's called immediacy. And that always increases intimacy. So a counseling skill is to share your feelings in the counseling session about the counseling session. And that increases the intimacy between the counselor and the counselee. And that's part of counseling skills. 3, messages should always be clear. Messages should always be clear. Make your conversations a reflection of your thoughts, feelings, needs, and observations without muddy interpretations. Try not to confuse what you see and hear from the outside world, what is going on inside you. Rescuers have a real problem with this and other people. That is, people pleasers. Because they know what they want, but because they're so used to not having good boundaries, other people's expectations then impinge on those boundaries, and you wind up shifting the boundaries back and back and back and back. For argument's sake, let's say I'm really tired because I've had a few late nights, and so I say to myself, and maybe even to my spouse, I want to be in bed by 9:30, and my spouse comes along and says, "Oh, come on, Daniel, finish watching the movie with me." Now, if I was a people pleaser or a rescuer, I'd give in to that, stay up until 11 o'clock and be clapped out the next morning. Where a firm boundary would be to say, I appreciate the fact that, you wanted to stay up with me and have my company, and I really like your company too, but, I really have to go to bed right now, and so I am. And there'd be no insult in that. Okay, number 4, make your messages fit together, saying one thing. Now, this is, of course, can be difficult, especially if I'm emotionally upset over various issues. I can jump from one issue to another. Uncertainty in what you are saying pulls the conversation in unclear directions. Your body language and your speech need to agree with your message. Avoid sending double messages which confuse people in what response they need to make. Say, if I was to fold my arms like this while I'm talking to you, if you just looked at the body message, what would that tell you?
It could be cold.
Okay, well that's where I'm headed with this, of course, is normally speaking, putting, in body language terms, putting my arms folded in front of me is keeping you away. It's a barrier. So if I was saying something really intimate, I'm talking to Susan, lovey-dovey sort of talk, and I got my arms like this, what is she supposed to believe? What I'm saying or what my body position is? Now the problem is, where body messages used to be the flavor of the month. Fortunately, it's died down a bit. But the problem is that I could be cold, or folding my arms is comfortable. See? So you can't read too much into that. Yeah. But whatever message I am sending, it should be consistent, and it should be one message.
What about those that are sort of intuitive in their way of speaking things out, and they need to speak it out to
Yeah.
in terms of what it is it's really eating at?
Absolutely. Intuitives need to speak it out, and so part of my job.
Muddy there for a while.
It is muddy there for a while, but if I'm non-judgmental, I will let you express yourself and let you fumble for the words and until I think I've got some sort of message, and then I'll reflectively listen back to you and say, so Jeff, is this what you're trying to say to me? And then if you respond back in a positive thing, then we've made connection. And I don't really care how long that takes, in a sense. I mean, if I'm not pressed for time or in a hurry, then I can give you all the time you need to share yourself with me. And that's, of course, part of the problem in a busy lifestyle, isn't it? Too, quick phone call here, all you people with your mobile phones, quick little call, short and curt because you don't want to spend too much money on these things, and it's probably causing a lot of confusion out there. Mobile phones are probably not good for communication, really. And not good for the bank balance either. But Telstra really enjoys them. They're making billions off you people. I don't have one, so I'm going to have a hidden agenda here and say I'm good and you're not. Okay. Huh? Yeah. Okay, let's go on. Number 5, learn for yourself what your needs are. We have a right to have needs. From God's point of view, I've got needs. God never despised us for needing clothing or needing food. He said, put first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. He never said you don't need them. He said, I'll supply them. I will supply your needs if you trust me. Say. And what's the second great commandment say? Love your neighbor as yourself. So I need to know what my needs are. I need to be able to convey what my needs are. And there's nothing unchristian in saying, I need to go to bed now. Past my bedtime, I'm tired, I need to go to bed now. Nothing unchristian in saying that when someone's trying to get you to stay up late with them. You know? My need overrides their want. And one of the problems, of course, is how to discern what my spouse's needs are versus what their wants are. As a husband, God never said I had to meet my wife's wants. I do not have to meet my wife's wants. But loving her means, in a Christ-like manner, that I'm to meet her needs. Now, how am I going to find out the difference? Come on, real question. How am I going to find out the difference? By talking with her. And I have to trust her enough, because that relationship's all about trust. I have to trust Susan enough that she knows what her needs are versus her wants. And so if she says to me, Daniel, it's really important that you come sit and have a cup of tea with me in bed in the morning, which she has told me, and I do, then I have to assume that in her scheme of priorities, for that connectedness that we then have, that is real. And that I'm willing to sacrifice 15, 20 minutes, half an hour of my time to make that happen, where if Susan came to me and said something like, really, I'm just making this up because she's not like that, but if she said, I need a new dress, it would probably be, I want a new dress, but I don't really need one, unless it was a special occasion. And I might be able to say to her, look, honey, can you just put that off a while? We really don't have the money. See? And that would still be a loving thing to say no. Okay, but Susan's going to have to define what her needs are. I can't come along and says, you need this. It would be pretty arrogant. Avoid hinting or asking others to clarify what they think you want or need. Spend some time sorting these two things out for your own benefit. Meditate and pray about what's going on inside you. One of the ways I've learned for some men, especially, to find out whether they're sensual beings, whether they have sensuality, whether they're in contact with their senses and their feelings, is to just ask them if they have a favorite color. And you'd be surprised how many people can't tell me whether they've got a favorite color or not. Because it's never occurred to them. They don't know themselves well enough to have decided whether they have a favorite color. Now, some people don't have one, but there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't have a clue because they've never thought about it. What's your favorite artist? What's your favorite songwriter? If you had nothing else to do, what would be your hobby? There's a lot of people that don't know those answers. And how am I going to communicate my needs to people when I don't know who I am? And a lot of people I see, whether they're 18-year-olds, which tend to be worse, or 50-year-olds, there's a lot of people that come to me, and you know what? It's an identity crisis. They don't know who they are or where they're going. Now, if I don't know who I am or where am I going, how am I going to communicate to you what my needs are? I don't even know what they are myself. Well, I better find out. Okay, number 6. Distinguish between your feelings and thoughts. I'm sure every one of us is guilty of this in this room tonight. We say things like, I feel Jeff Kennett's a lousy premier. Is that a correct statement? Why not? Because that's a thought. That's not a feeling at all. There was no emotional terms involved there. But because we're in an intellectual society, we tend to use the word I feel when really what we're saying is I think. I have a belief system. I have an attitude. And let's reserve the word feeling for genuine feeling words, emotional words like sadness or grief or anger or anxiety or whatever. Okay, so I need to distinguish between my feelings and thoughts. Many people inappropriately use the word feel when they mean think. For example, I feel the government is going to be reelected. This is inappropriate and muddles communication. We need to deliberately identify and express our feelings. Be as accurate as you can. And by the way, if you're emotional maturity to me is someone who can identify and share their feelings accurately. So they don't just say, I'm upset. They don't just say, I'm angry when they're furious. They say, I'm furious. To me, that's emotional maturity. When I'm not using vague words. The more specific I can communicate exactly my feelings, the more accurately we can all know what to do with them. And if you have trouble with the accuracy of your feelings, if you tend to use general words like hurt and upsettedness, then I suggest you get a thesaurus, one of those books that has similar meanings in them. And look up words like anger and start working out all the different anger words you could be using when you're angry. Are you annoyed? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Are you furious? Okay? That's a skill we need to learn. Number 7, focus on one issue or event at a time. Few people can juggle their thoughts over different issues at one time, especially when emotionally charged events are being discussed. And I'll try to not say especially with men, but I probably need to add that. Focused males have difficulty coping with more than one thing at a time.
It's difficult for a woman who really does need to talk through something.
That's right.
In order to work out what it is she's actually thinking.
That's it. Yeah, it is. Real conflict there. The male's focused, he's on one track. The lady might be talking about one issue, switch to another issue in the middle of 3 minutes. And although that's bad communication, as far as intuitive people go, I mean, that's just normal. So if you get accused of, some of you intuitive people, if you get accused of switching subjects, it's probably because you're trying to narrow it down. You've got this huge pile of different pathways, and as you're talking about, you're reducing those numbers down. You're whittling it down. And your partner needs to cooperate with you by letting you do that. Okay, so that is a conflict. Yeah, you bet.
Can that be a distraction?
Which
use that as I'm thinking of a specific example actually, but
yeah,
do you think people would use that to actually not resolve the issue?
Sure.
They come complaining, and then when you try to get to that root of it, they say, "Oh, well, what about this?
Yeah.
How about that?"
Yeah, sure they could. But the problem is that, as we just saw, working out somebody's motivation is really hard. See? And all I can really do, I mean, people come to me for counseling, and they're lying to me. Okay? The truth is, most counselees are lying to me, especially if they're drug abusers, I mean, they're just classics. But they're lying to me for 2 reasons. One is they don't want me to know the truth yet, because they haven't worked out whether they trust me or not. So some are going to be deliberately lying. But secondly, they're lying because their hearts are deceitfully wicked. They're under deception. They don't know what they're, they really don't know. See? And I have to, I hear a bit of judgment in here somewhere, and I have to unconditionally love them enough to say, I'm trusting that what you're telling me is the truth from your perspective. Because if I don't do that, we're not going to go anywhere. How can I judge whether they're telling me the truth or not? I get married couples come in, and the husband says one thing, and the wife says another thing, and you think, are we talking about the same couple? You hear these 2 different stories, they're just so totally different. And if I add my 2 cents in, we've now got 3 opinions. Well, that's not going to help anything. I have to assume the best in people. As a Christian, especially, God demands that I expect the best from that other person, and that I'm going to take what they tell me as truth. So if someone's waffling on, yes, they might be doing it on purpose. Sure, Paul. Of course, some people can do that. But But if someone waffles on with me, I'm going to take a charitable view of it, that they're intuitive and they're just trying to work out exactly what they're feeling and thinking. And I'll let them waffle on for a while. I'll always keep control of the counseling situation so that we don't get way off track. But I'll give them enough time to express themselves. And I'm not going to impute their motivations. Because if they come to me with the wrong motivations, it's wasting their time. Wasting my time too, but hey, it's some of the co-counselors in this room, there's some people that co-counsel with me, and we have appointments, and people don't turn up, or they turn up late. Well, that's the deal. That's the business I'm in. Always has an element of people being late or absent-minded or losing the plot, because that's where they're at. They're under intense pain. The husband's just broken their arm again, and they're in hospital. They come for me for counseling, and I'm going to be upset because they're late. Get real. So I have to, have that unconditional love approach where I'm just going to accept what people tell me is truth. And if it's not my problem. They're not going to get the benefit of the healing and the change if they're pulling the wool over my eyes. Now, I know you're not talking counseling; you're talking maybe personal issues. But even on a personal issue, I have to release them. I have to release them to keep doing what they're going to do, because they're going to keep doing it anyhow. And if I have unforgiveness in my heart, it's only going to get me all frustrated. Now, as Diane pointed out, that does not stop me from putting out boundaries and saying, no, this far, no further. But I can have the right attitude when I do that. Did that sort of answer the question? Okay, let's go on to number 8. Messages need to be supportive. Messages need to be supportive. Avoid using sarcasm. Sarcasm is a terrible thing. And I don't know if it's any worse in this culture than America, but it's a terrible thing because it's really criticism disguised in a humorous way. And it still hurts. People still get hurt by sarcasm. On an intellectual level, you can dismiss it, but it's the arrow still goes in. Avoid using sarcasm, labeling, dragging up the past, using negative comparisons, giving one-sided judgmental statements, handing out threats, and blaming others. Win-lose games only hurt others and yourself as they block further resolution of any disagreement. Not helpful. Number 9, be responsible. Be responsible for your feelings, thoughts, or actions. Other people can't make you angry. They can't make you angry. How you respond to a hurt is your responsibility. Don't try to lay the blame for your reactions on another. Remember we talked about last week that my responses show up my problems. When God is talking to Dan Fengler, it's irrelevant what Susan has done. It's totally irrelevant. When God is looking at me and saying, Daniel, you had the wrong response to that, it is my problem. Got nothing to do with Susan whatsoever. Now, obviously, when God is talking to Susan, what I'm doing is totally irrelevant. Okay, any questions?
With labeling in paragraph 8.
Pigeonholing, labeling, an idiot, name calling.
In some cases, labeling is good when you're trying to identify something and you give it a name. When you're talking about emotions, we sometimes call that labeling, don't we?
Well, I'd define labeling as pigeonholing, and it's a judgment statement. And now, for argument's sake, if we're talking about diagnosing a problem, to put a label on it, tentatively to put a label on it, helps me narrow down the field. So if we called somebody a schizophrenic, now, according to strict guidelines, you can't actually call anybody schizophrenic for 6 months. That is, you can tentatively put some sort of label on them that they might have a schizoaffective disorder or something, but to actually give them a label, you have to wait to see whether the symptoms persist for 6 months. See? Now, in a sense, as a human being, I'm in the same position. If I'm labeling somebody, that put them in a little pigeonhole that they might not fit. And that's one problem with talking about male-female differences, is that there are some people that don't fit the mold at all. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus is a norm thing. That is, most people are in the middle of the bell-shaped curve, which I think we talked about that. And the people at the extremes don't fit into that model. And I have to be aware. So if I say all women are like this, I'm gonna miss it big. Now, if we're talking in generalities and I say women are like this, I'm going to talk always that with the implication that there's exceptions to that. Always exceptions to that. Okay, on page 10, homework and exercise 2. So first of all, if you didn't, those hidden agendas, make sure you finish that up if you can. And then exercise 2, for the next lesson, practice whole message by rewriting the following incomplete or contaminating messages. In the following exercise, try making a whole message out of each statement and write it in the first person. So the statement is, and this is a mixed message, I see you're getting uptight.